Welcome back to a little place in Dublin where the purple chairs are taking precedence. Today we have a very special guest who we came across in our business when we wanted to decarbonise our whole outlook from the cars and right the way back. So this is a guy called Maurice Ryan from Greenbelt who plants trees, but he'll tell you more. So welcome, Maurice. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. Great. Good to have you.
Yeah, delighted to be here.
This is just a little bit different for us now, so.
Good, yeah, a little different for me too.
Yeah, because see, I think there's a massive misconception, like we talked about, so you give us a little bit of what you think people think of you and what you do.
Yeah, well, more recently now, as the carbon agenda is becoming increasingly important in everyday life, people look at it and try and get their head around what actually is out there. And they look at forestry in Ireland and think certain trees aren't providing the service that they're meant to provide. So every forest that's out there, whether it be publicly or privately owned, and we work in the private forest sector, is capturing carbon on a daily, annual basis. It's a function of photosynthesis, so the more it grows, the more carbon it captures, and it's stored then in the harvested wood products. So anybody who's watching this is probably sitting at a table or on a couch or something like that, and they take a glance around them. Everything in the room around them has some element of wood in it.
This is what I love. When you opened my eyes, I was like, oh my God, you're right.
You know, like the frame of these beautiful purple chairs is made of timber. You know, the skirting boards, everything, and it comes from timber. And it tends to come from timber that people don't necessarily like the look of, that Sitka spruce, the trees up the mountains. I mean, it's a very different type of forest and woodland than an oak forest, for example. But it has the same value, if not more, to the community and to the environment than any other plantation would. And it's really important that they exist, and there's no right rule or wrong rule for it should only be one forest. Diversity of species is extremely important, but providing material for the construction industry to build homes, as I said, everything like from your roof trusses down to your skirting boards and your wooden floors comes from this Irish timber. You know, and that can be Sitka spruce. You can get an oak table in the middle of it. You know, but it's extremely important because the carbon that's captured throughout that photosynthesis process is stored then in those products for as long as those products survive, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what about, do you remember the story you were telling me about the tree? So, and excuse my ignorance, about the whole tree and the different sections of the tree, and they're used for different purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at, particularly from a commercial tree that's used for construction, for example, it could be 30 metres tall by the time it's harvested. And every aspect of that tree is used and certainly should be used and utilised to its highest value. So the lower part of it is the most valuable because it has the greatest diameter. And that's used in sawmills, and it's cut in using very, very high-tech computers and milling techniques to get the most valuable timber out of it possible for, as I keep going on about, construction timber. But the rest of it is continually used as well. So fencing posts, pallets that you transport around, and even the top of the trees now are used for energy production, heat and energy production, in a much more sustainable manner.
Are they the pellet things?
Yeah, you can convert it into pellets. So you obviously have the top end of your tree is about 3 to 5 metres depending on bits and pieces. And it's chipped and it can be converted into wood pellets or just used as the wood chip. And so when you look at Ireland's in a state of an energy crisis at the moment, and it's an energy supply crisis. So we need to look at alternative forms of providing electricity. And you see entities like data centres, for example, huge drains on the resources that currently exist. And that's another conversation we can have another time about the efficiency of the thing.
Isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is, of course. But I mean, that's the efficiency of our network is extremely poor. But looking at the alternative fuel supplies, biomass can be very much part of that mix going forward. It doesn't have to be. So if you look at a data center, they need to have 3 sources of power generation going into it. One sustainable, one backup, and then the grid. And you want to have something kind of building into that. And a lot of them now are looking at biomass into that.
And is there an education piece that people just don't know about it yet?
Yeah, well, I think an awful lot of people don't realise when they walk through forests, and in fairness to Quilter, they do an awful lot of good in providing public forests to walk through and the like. And people have an idea that the timber they see has no biodiversity in it and animals can't live in it. I mean, all of that is wildly false. You know, it's a very different level of diversity and a very different form of diversity that you will find in a Sitka spruce forest than you will in an oak forest, for example. But it's just as diverse and equally as important to the ecosystem that we all live in.
Because we are like, and I would speak for everyone out there really, and we touched on it earlier, it's just we think of trees, Christmas trees once a year, and don't really give it a second thought.
No.
You know, walking through the mountains, you're not really thinking of, and that's why this is so important to get you here, is because after this conversation, people will start having a different appreciation for walking in the mountains now.
Yeah, well, that's what I've really enjoyed in the last couple of years. That the only positive to come out of COVID is that more people have spent time outside and actually kind of understood where local greenways are and parklands and woodlands and mountain walks, and actually spend time in the forest and appreciate the value of a forest. And a lot of people do prefer to see mature woodlands and the like, and that's personal preference. But I know I'm particularly lucky, obviously, that I get to work in it. But spending time in a forest it's absolutely joyous. Like, it's just unbelievable. Yeah. And actually spend a little bit of time walking through it. You don't need to go on a forest bathing course. You just need to walk and jump over a stream and duck under a branch and whatever else. And it's a very grounding experience. It's absolutely fabulous because you're in nature. You're absolutely just
and it's silent.
At one.
Give or take birds and all.
Yeah, but I mean, if you pause in the middle of a forest, you hear things that you will never hear. Like we're here in the middle of Dublin, and if you stopped here, you're going to hear very different things than you will in a forest. So
what is, like, in terms of how does someone watching this and I have this thing about you know, what's going on in the world, and what we're talking about now is that it's kind of, when people have too much information, they shut down and don't listen to anything. So to bring it right back down to someone watching this, as you said, from their desk that's made of wood, is there anything they can do in terms of a support, or do you support this type of thing, or because you would work more with businesses really?
Oh, we work with private individuals predominantly, actually. I mean, the majority of the planting we do would be for farmers, really, down around the country, where they would have land available and suitable for planting. We're finding more and more individuals are looking to maybe secure their wealth or leave a living legacy for the next generation, and are putting money into private forestry. So they'll buy a piece of land, and we'll help them with that. We can buy land and we can plant it and manage it for them, and they can visit it as often as they like. Yeah. People have the great intention of visiting it once a month, and they might see it in 15 years, but that's okay. I mean, we've met people who've never seen their forest, ever, and that's fine. I mean, but it is a fabulous living legacy, and it's a great thing to be able to hand to the next generation and bring them down.
So how do they get involved in that?
Well, it depends.
I know how long's a piece of string, but in terms
I mean, it can be as simple as spending time in a forest. I mean, and actually appreciating it and spreading that word, and saying that, you know, looking at it and having an appreciation of forest and doing a little bit of reading about it and being a bit more positive about it. There's a huge amount of publicity out there that can be very negative towards forestry, and it's misinformed. Like publications, you know, some of the national newspapers that we have here have issued commentary based on snippets of information. It's completely false, but it's just a headline grabber.
Sensational.
And it is, and it's Irish forestry industry is in a really critical state at the moment. It's really, really urgently requiring more forestry to be planted. And the Department of Agriculture, who administers it under the Forest Service, they're not issuing licenses. And as a result, the country, and there's a recent report out on this, the country needs to be planting 18,000 hectares each year. Okay. Wow. Last year, as a country, we planted 1,800. That's 10% of what we should be planting. Now, the impact on that, people don't understand what a hectare is, and that's okay, I'm not asking people to, but the impact of that, if we don't have more forest in the ground, we're not going to be able to meet our emission targets as set out by the COP rules. And the impact on that from a financial perspective ranks in the billions of euros as penalties and fines to the Irish government, which is going to trickle down the hill to us. And to put that into perspective, had we met our planting targets from 2010 to 2022, we would have been in a position where Ireland would have been a net sequester of carbon. So we would have been capturing as much carbon as we would have emitted, which would have had zero impact then on the agricultural side of things. So you've heard recently that they're talking about culling animals from farms, they're reducing herd sizes because our emission levels are too high. Had we managed the forestry estate to the level we were meant to have, that conversation wouldn't be happening now.
So it's not. So basically, they're plugging holes now, and just it's kind of
well, they're way behind the curve.
Yeah,
you know, like.
But is there a chance they'll ever catch up then? Or does that
it's
mean
becoming more and more difficult because of legislation and regulations and everything like that.
But why aren't they giving out licenses? Or
well, that's the $1 million question.
Is that just red tape nonsense kind of stuff?
There's a lot of that.
So if I'm a farmer and I say, look, I'm not using that field, what do we do about it? Do I have to go through all the red tape then?
Yeah, and it can take quite a long time.
6 months, 12 months kind of thing?
Longer. Which is bizarre.
And you see, that's the point, right? So it's a bit like when they talk about electric cars, it's 986,000 by 2030. All right, that's grand, and it's like what you're talking about. But if there wasn't, there has to be a bit of red tape, fine, but if that wasn't such a barrier, because what happens is I give you that field over there, it takes 24, 36 months, and, you know, halfway through that I say, you know, I couldn't be bothered now.
Well, we've seen the attrition rate that if an application is put in, 60% of people will drop off after 3 months if it's not approved.
Yeah. You know.
And we're literally blue in the face, knocking on politicians' doors, trying to get this through. It's a process issue, and the process has not been resolved. And it is as simple as that. And they've spoken about putting funds towards this, that, and the other, and employing so many different people. It's not working, and they're not doing it right because they've all the ecologists in the world. But it's all filtering down to one person. They've all the inspectors in the world, but it's all filtering down to one person to sign off on that.
So that's just going, the desk is getting higher
completely,
and higher.
You know. There's no issue, as an industry and as a company, we have no issue with regulation and we support it. I mean,
because there has to be.
Of course it does. And we have to manage the environment we operate in and the ecosystem that we operate in. Of course we do. It's really, really important. And look at the long-term implications of the activities we take, you know. I mean, forestry has, it's not one of, forestry actually has the lowest impact on its environment than any other agricultural activity. Right. So to put that in perspective, you plant a tree in the morning or you plant a forest, and people have this idea that there's going to be this crazy runoff into rivers and streams, and there's pollution and there's acid rain and there's whole shebang, and there's acidity going into it. That's been proved categorically incorrect.
Yeah, okay.
A site is developed and trees put on it. The trees actually act as a buffer to clean water, or to clean water going into streams, or to clean the land going into because of the root structure. The acidity would have come from historical things like Sellafield and the like in the rain, you know, and that's all obviously dissipated, thank God, you know, and the clean air that we have now, so there's none of this dirty coal being smoked, you know what I mean? So all of that would have led to that increased levels of acidity, which was attributed to these forests, but that's not actually the case. So there's like forests obviously add huge value to a community. So you look at the majority of forests.
And wildlife as well, though.
Yeah, well, no, of course. I mean, so you look at a tree goes in. There's homes for microorganisms in the soil, animals above it, birds, trees, the whole shebang. Obviously, the carbon it captures, and it increasingly and captures more carbon as it goes on to a life cycle. It has a life cycle like everything else. But you look at then the rural employment that it develops, because the majority of forests aren't planted around where we are chatting now. I mean, half a forest here, but but they're out the country, and these are supporting rural communities. I mean, Ireland is very skewed towards Dublin and the cities, but it supports rural communities. So the person who plants the land, he gets premiums and he gets payments, so he's got an income, or they have an income. But the local contractor who plants the forest, they have an income. The shop has an income because the contractor's going in and around the town all the time. When the forest matures, the timber's going locally, the contractors are working in and around the area. It employs more than 12,000 people in the country, the forest industry. It generates about 2.3 billion to the economy. Forestry has a multiplier effect of 2.7. So for every euro that's put in, 2.7 goes around the local economy, which is higher than dairy and beef. So I'm not saying forestry instead of dairy and beef, but it should be more complementary.
But why is it being ignored so much then? Or is it just, are we in a society where, not a society as in the people, but like governmental level, in a society where it's just this big problem is on our desk now. We have to deal with it. There's no future planning. Like, let's
it's very short.
strategize this and think about it.
I think it's very short-termism from the government, because there's an old Chinese saying, when is the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago, and the next best time is now. And we're being hit with this reality. So in the 90s and all the way through to the noughties, you would have had 15,000, 10,000 hectares planted each year. And there's been a steady decline since then. The impact is not going to be felt today or tomorrow in that, okay? Although we're feeling it now because the numbers have declined so much. But you fast forward 10 or 15 years, when timber can be used more for whole house construction, not just the frames and the trusses, or 7-story apartment blocks and office buildings. You're seeing more and more timber being used in that. That availability of timber won't be there in Ireland, and as a result, we're going to have to import that. And that's not sustainable. That's not the right way to do it, and that is that very short-termism.
And that's
they're talking about targets, and they're talking about achieving X, Y, and Z, and they don't seem to have the appetite, willingness, interest, capability of achieving this. And it's running the risk of destroying the private forest industry. And that's not being dramatic.
No,
that
it's
is
not.
Real,
it's a shame, but I mean, if people are listening to this, there's ways it can be supported. But so say the likes of the COVID, had that bringing people back to towns, has that helped it in any way in terms of getting people to talk to you guys, to plant trees? Again, the ecosystem of planting the trees, the local shop, because people are moving back through COVID to their local area. Has that changed anything or not really?
Well, we've seen more people now express more of an interest in managing and owning a forest and having some forestry of their own. Whether they come together as a group of 3 or 4 people, because land prices are expensive. It's not for everybody. But they can get involved in that. There's local communities that can come together and turn a green area of grass into an amenity woodland. So there's government supports for that. So for example, we did a couple of jobs around the country in communities, like one area which was effectively a wasteland, and we worked with the local council to convert that into an amenity parkland by planting trees and greening it up. And the soil they had was shockingly poor, so we worked with them to improve that. And now you have a thriving micro woodland, little woodland, and people can enjoy. And so we'll work with communities to develop that. And we have indigenous companies willing to financially support that. And they're not looking for a big banner across it. They will just subtly go, we have a budget for community projects, and we'll work with Greenbelt to develop that project. So we're looking for community projects.
And then you have your days, do you have company days out where you bring a company and you actually show them how to do it and they plant all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we found that to be really rewarding, actually.
But again, it's the education, the physical education. This is actually how it's done, as opposed to just being talked about.
Well, they understand when they see that, and they go, okay, well, this tree goes in here. That's okay, and how do you do it, and why do you do that? And they see the life cycle. Yeah, well, they see then, they understand the life cycle. You put a tree into a field, or if I give you a tree now, you're going, okay, I'll do that. And you can plant it at home, and it might grow, and it might fail, and it might do this. But you put a young tree this size into a field, and you manage it and you nurture it, excuse me, the whole plantation, there's a great sense of pride in seeing that develop. And so we have that pride as a company because we planted 500 million trees. So there's a great sense of pride in that. But everybody who can get involved and see that. So we brought companies out for sort of team building days where they get an opportunity to plant trees. And it's amazing to see the level of competition. They're tearing lumps out of each other, trying to figure it out, And actually one of the most rewarding comments I got at the end of that was a guy come up to me, and I won't curse, but he said, I came out, I thought it'd be rubbish, but I really enjoyed it. He was a bit more flary what he said.
But that's what I'm talking about. It's really connecting people. And that's, when people watching this, is that it's not just, the tree is just part of the story, the rest, and it's an emotional side. It's like when people get sick and then all they want to do is be healthy again. But if you take it from before you get sick, to think about walking in the forest, think about planting a tree, and I love the idea of the whole ecosystem, and it's a feel-good factor. Money doesn't give you that. This is making an impact.
No, and actually that's a really interesting point, because People think you can go off and buy X, Y, and Z, and it's going to make you feel better, and you'll get a transitory boost.
Yeah.
But actually, you need to be looking after your mental health and your,
Yeah.
you know, and that is critical. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not one single person that I know, and who's probably listening to this, who hasn't had some level of mental health.
Yeah, we all do.
concern. Of course
Yeah,
we do.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
days you're up and there's days you're down.
Yeah.
I remember a particular day. I'm not sure if I said this to you before, but it was all kicking off. You know, there was this problem. We thought we had it solved, and then it flared up. And I just rearranged the diary to go out to the forest that I had planned anyway. And I spent a day walking forests, kind of mulling things through in my mind, and it was the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. I had a sense of calm because I wasn't surrounded by computers and screens and phone calls and everybody shouting and roaring at one another. I was out in the open. I was around trees. I gave my time for my thoughts to settle. And I came in so much more productive the next day. And we sat down, everybody was a bit more reasoned and calm. And we sat it down and we resolved the issue.
I see.
And it was phenomenal, you know.
I see, and this is a point as well, like what you're saying, is that this is a free thing. Everybody in Ireland is only a driver away from a forest of some sort. Doesn't need to be up a mountain, doesn't need to be big or small. And that's what I'm saying, because people think they work hard, that it's a good thing. But there's no point in collapsing one day and then going back to the forest. You
No.
do it. It's prevention is better than cure and all that kind of stuff.
It's like it should be part of your life.
Yeah.
You know, it should be, whether you have a walk to work and you pass through a green area, you know, and there's a few trees in it or
That's
whatever
the thing,
it is.
the green area, and that's why it's important to have this conversation with you today, is that it's not about, I have to grow a massive forest to feel good. No, it's simple things. Bringing the kids, your friends, up a mountain for a walk. And as you said, the benefits, the mental benefits is ginormous. And then when that's settled, then you can go on about your business and just cope better.
No, and that's it. And it is about coping and getting perspective in life, you know. And that's all grand going off and buying a new jacket or whatever it is. You feel, I feel great, look good and all the rest of it. Then you kind of go, geez, I couldn't afford that.
So anyway, that was a great conversation. I mean, important conversation to make people really understand everything to do with the whole ecosystem all the way through. As Maurice explained, the pitfalls. But I'd encourage everyone to get out there. Even just do it for yourself. Baby steps. Get out and walk in forest. I think forest is really nice. We can all go there. Give yourself 10 minutes of nothing, just silence, and listen to what you hear. It's very interesting. So Maurice, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
It's great
Thanks,
to see you, and great to have you here, and all the information was very well taken, so thank you for that. We might at some stage in the future, the next few months, go out, actually physically go out with you.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, just to give people the more connection. But in the meantime, get out and start walking and look after yourselves. Till then, bye.